Thanks for joining me. I'm Scotty D, and this is a Gibson J-30 made in Nashville, Tennessee back in 1987, and it's serial number 824-67556. Not too many of these survived. Although, believe it or not, there's been 2 of these come through in the last 2 weeks, and they're exactly the same. Even the serial number is only like 4 digits different. But this one needs a little work on the bridge plate and the frets. So let's go inside this thing and have a look. One of the unique things about this model is that they put an ebony insert around where the pinholes are, and they dropped it down inside of a rosewood bridge. It's a reverse belly bridge, and this ebony plug is rather deep. It goes about halfway through the whole thickness of the bridge. Should be a pretty good sounding guitar. I have it tuned down right now. It's about a step flat. I'm going to stick a mirror down here so you can see something interesting. So if you look in there, you'll see that the D string ball has gone way up deep inside, up and around into where the soundboard area is. So that one hole is definitely going to need to be plugged and re-drilled. I might repair the other ones just a skosh while I'm in there. But notice the signature on there. It says R. Lee 13087. So the Gibson employees were putting their names with ballpoint pen backwards, like they had to write it in reverse so that they, at some point, if anybody put a mirror inside, they could read it real quick. So, and this is true of both of these J-30s that came through. The other one was signed by Philip A. on 2/28 of 87, and I was wrong about the serial numbers. They're like a million numbers different. So how could that be that they're a million numbers different? Maybe I wrote this down wrong. Maybe they're only like 100,000 off. But yeah, that the employees signed the guitars. So if you have one of these J-30s, look inside, stick a mirror in there. You should be able to read it right away. And it's going to look like they wrote it with their toes because they're writing it backwards. That's pretty bad. You can barely see the ball. But everything else about the Nashville Gibson Acoustics looks just like you'd expect. You know, they were still making electrics. They just didn't make very many acoustics in Nashville. And in a few years after this was made, they'd start production in Bozeman, Montana. But isn't that a nice iced tea burst that they did on this guitar? Just a pretty guitar. Well, for you J-30 fans, just have some information on it. It was introduced in 1985, and this was the mahogany. It was renamed the J-30 Montana in 1994. They discontinued this model in 1997. There was also a J-30 Cutaway made in the 90s, early 90s. A J-30 Koa with Koa back and sides in 1995. There was a J-30 with mahogany top in 92. A J-30 Montana Special in 95. I don't know what that was. And then a J-30 Rosewood, which would have had rosewood back and sides in 1992, 93, and then again in 95, 96. And then they had something called J-30 Western, which I don't know what the heck that was, in 94. But this is a good old, you know, spruce top, mahogany back and sides. J-30 standard, 1985 through 1987, Nashville. First thing I'm going to do is carefully remove a little bit of the wood from the top of the bridge. We'll do it the easy way with the Bosch Colt router and a 1/4 inch bit. The break angle was not so good on this guitar.
mostly on the treble side, the high E. That ain't too bad on the treble side, but I'd like to bring it down quite a bit on the bass side. Now I'm switching over to a rasp, and then I'll clean up a little bit, hit it with a file, and then I'll hit it with a little sandpaper. I'll start off with a little 80 grit on a radius block. This is a 20-inch radius block. And then I'll go to a 220 grit, or a 120 grit. First I start with 80, I go to 120, and then lastly 220 and 320 grit on a foam block.
Okay, I went and hit it on the guitar buffer, and it was polished up in a jiffy. This is naphtha. I'm just cleaning off the buffing compound. And it looks like we're ready. Now this guitar, get that, hold on. It had two saddles in the box, so I'm going to put the shorter one back in. Okay, so when I unpacked the guitar, this saddle was in there. Boy, that one's kind of tight. I'm going to put this one back in because I like a little lower action for him. And you should have a nicer break angle now. Let's take a look.
Actually, before we restring it, I gotta fix the bridge plate under the D string where that ball was pulling up through the bridge plate. First, I'm gonna take some accelerator on a foam Q-tip and get that accelerator down inside the hole. I moved the camera over to the other side so the D string is on the far side now. These are maple fibers from Hard Rock maple board. I take it off the edge of the board with that rasp, and then I pack it in with a dowel, and then I drop in StewMac number 10 thin CA glue, and I spray with accelerator once, twice, 3 times a blue goose. Now, I want you to see the jack that I used to hold that foam block up against the bridge plate. We'll remove the light and pull out that jack. So you can see my little operation I got going here. Bridge plate fixer. And I fix it in seconds. I usually take a little 120 grit sandpaper on a small block and clean up the inside bridge plate. Then, because I shaved down the bridge so much, I've got to re-chamfer each pinhole. And re-drilling that pinhole is a 4-step process. I use a 3/8 Forstner bit just to get the hole started. And then I step down to an 1/8 inch bit and 2 sizes in between 1/8 inch and 3/16 and work my way back up to the 3/16. That way I don't blow out the inside. And then I use a reamer there to finish her off. This guitar also had a few dents in the fretboard and a little bit of an anomaly in the fretboard where the treble side was pretty good as far as relief goes. The relief was right there in the middle at the 6th and 7th fret where you want it. But on the bass side, the relief was mostly up by the 10th fret. So I used different lengths of the fret bar while the strings were up to full tension and ran this to level the board. It's kind of like having the StewMac neck jig, but without having the neck jig. Also, there's a giant hump at the neck to body joint, so I'll take care of that with my snap file. And this is the mill file attachment snapped in to the file right here. This way I can hog off a whole bunch of fret tops by eye. I just work it for a little while to recheck it with a straight edge till it doesn't rock so badly. You know when you've got like an 8 to 10 inch straight edge and you rock it across this area that you've got a neck to body joint hump. After the mill file, I go at it with a double double-edged file. Clean up the fret dust with the vacuum. Then I take the 90-degree corner off each side of the fret that was created by the files. This is a triangle file. It's a single cut mill file with the edges ground safe. Either way, I've got a piece of stainless steel here, so I probably wouldn't damage the fretboard too badly if I didn't have the stainless, but I always manage to scratch it up without it. And this is a fret guard from Music Nomad, and I've switched the snap file to the diamond bit. See it there? That's the diamond. It removes all the file scratches off the tops of the frets. If you'd like to get one of these fret guards or fret shields, you can get it from StewMac. You can get it from Sweetwater. Next I go and I polish all the frets with 320 grit through 2000 grit. I use what's called a scrub block, which is basically a piece of stair tread that's cut down to a 3.5 by 3.5 square. After the 320 grit sandpaper, I remove the fret shield and run maroon Scotch-Brite across the entire fretboard and the frets. This kind of cleans up the fretboard, and it prepares the fret tops for the 400 grit. It's just a nice in-between. I use 2 grits of Scotch-Brite every time I do a fret polishing job. The maroon in between the 320 and 400, and the gray in between the 1000 and 1200. So I'll reattach the fret shield and continue on with 400 grit. There's also a piece of 1/8 inch foam attached to the scrub block to give it a little padding. And lastly, I use 4/0 steel wool to give it that deep dark shine that lasts for about 1 hour. Naphtha to clean. And lemon oil, that cool, refreshing drink. Get you some. Next, I'm going to run some string ramps into the pinholes. This gives for a really nice break angle. Guaranteed every time. A lot of the new Gibsons are coming this way right from the factory. Whether they need it or not. Sometimes not. I actually went ahead and put the old saddle, this existing saddle back in the slot because the other saddle was too low. So we've got a great break angle again, good sound now that we've lowered the wood. And there's one more thing I'd like to show you that's unique about the J-30. I'm going to take the strings off so you can see. And there it is. The neck block has a unique C shape to it, but it also, as you can see, it's round, but the height of it has a C shape. It actually comes up on the top side also, and there's a screw. Let me show you the screw. Okay, so there's the bottom, and as it comes up to the top, you see where it's got that C shape scooped out of it. Very unique and abnormal. It's got this screw hole, like it's got a screw. It's got a screw coming up maybe into this area somehow. I don't know why. For what reason? There's a screw going, or a hole. Maybe there's nothing in that hole. I can't see it. But maybe if we put the mirror in there just right, we can see it. What's going on in there? Is there something in there? There were a few pick scratches up here above the pick guard. And since this is nitro lacquer, it's really not like lacquer missing. It's just crushed lacquer. So you can re-amalgamate that with lacquer retarder or lacquer thinner. Lacquer retarder is better for this, even though it stinks. And what I do is I wait a few days and then I rub it out, and it you can barely tell there was ever any damage. So get you some retarder.
So to all you J-30 lovers out there, just wanted to say thanks for tuning in. Let me know in the comments if you have a J-30, what year it is, and if you can find that signature on the inside. That would be cool to know the story. And stick around, we're going to hear this one. Changing the brake angle on the over the saddle does change the sound of it, but also putting new strings on it is going to change the sound of it. And actually, everything you do to an acoustic guitar changes the sound of it, so no surprise there. But stick around, I'm going to finish putting these in and we'll give her a listen. Here's my string wrapping method up close. Anyways, don't touch that dial. We're almost ready. There we go. Last week's 63 Jazzmaster, that one's already gone back to its owner, and this is a 65. Really different sounding too. The 63 had a nice warm woody sound, and the 65 is really trebly. Like you have to turn the tone on like 6 to make it sound like normal. It's kind of thin sounding, but otherwise, I mean, like pretty much the same. This one's in like mint condition too. It's just crazy how good a condition that's in. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you liking and subscribing and sharing all these videos. I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and hope to see you next week. Catch you later.